Hello, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. Tonight, we are talking with la doctora Cristina Melendez, who is going to join us for a candid conversation where we will discuss teaching to transgress. For those of you that are joining us for the first time, Candid Conversations is a show, if you will, that I started because I was interested in talking with people about their journey, their trajectory, and whatever area it is in, and wanted people to share the joys, the triumphs, the obstacles. And I believe that storytelling, both telling stories and listening to stories, helps us in healing, helps us in transformation, helps us in creating impact in our personal lives and also in the lives of the people that are around us. And so tonight, we are going to get started with Doctora Cristina Melendez. I am so excited for our conversation. I'm like a little schoolgirl. Oh! You know what? I can't stand you. I cannot even stand you, Cristina.
I love it. I know you were having I was watching for a little bit and I was like, oh, she's saying something really important. I should hold off because I was going to come being extra loud. So I don't know what you were saying when I cut you off, but congratulations. Doctora.
Thank you.
Welcome to the 1% of us. It is my honor to share that space with you. And so I came in full regalia or whatever the heck it's called, just to show you. Because I know graduations are crazy. I don't know if you're going to have one, right? So I wanted to celebrate and honor you in the ways that everyone else honors their cohorts, right? Like police officers honor each other with full uniform. Army folks, they honor each other in full uniform. And so this is our uniform now.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness.
Congratulations, Cindy.
Thank you. Thank you. So those of us that are joining, if you're joining us now, or if you're catching the replay, you probably see me. I'm going to be posting all week long. So yesterday I defended my dissertation. I am now Doctora Cindy Bautista-Thomas. Yes. It was a 7-year journey and I'm so excited about it. And so it still hasn't quite hit me yet.
I know.
Thank you. And I told Cristina earlier today that this was not about me today, but you see what she did.
It's always about all of us, right? When it's about one of us, it's about all of us. And so I think it's really important to celebrate you, to honor you in this process, because I know how hard it is, right? Like I know firsthand, but I also know how unique that experience is. So I am honored. Woo-hoo! Woo! I am proud to be part of your circle of friends and proud to be a doctora with you. I am so excited for you.
Thank you.
So congratulations.
Thank you so much. I'm going to embrace that congratulations and embrace the accolades, because one thing that I'm looking to shift in our community is the acceptance of accomplishments, right? And not saying oh no, girl, that was nothing. Yes, it was everything. It was everything. For the last 3 years, right?
Yep.
So thank you for that honor. Thank you for that affirmation. I really appreciate it. And so I didn't even get to introduce la doctora Cristina Melendez. So I'm going to do that right now. Thank you, Cristina. So I met la doctora Cristina Melendez when we were parents at a school, right? We're still parents at the school. We met because we were parents. We met on a parenting journey of our children being in school together and us connecting as parents of color in a predominantly white institution. And I will never forget you in a meeting
and you were talking about something, and you were just serving it. I don't even remember what meeting it was. And I was like, I don't know who she is, but I need to get to know her, right? And then I found out that you're Dominican. And I said, right? Then we like connected at another function, and then we just started chit-chatting on pickup and drop off.
Yes.
You know, to never underestimate the power of connection, the power of having the time even to talk, right? When you drop off and pick up. There's so much power in that we're not experiencing right now, right? Like, let's keep it real. The pandemic has impacted so many different things, but that's probably one of the areas maybe. It's like that connection that some families make before drop off, after drop off. So when we connected, we had a conversation about our educational endeavors and goals and intentions. And I remember that at that time I was applying to doctoral programs.
Yes.
And I decided what program I was going to apply to. And then you shared your journey with education, your journey with your career. And I was so inspired because we had so many things in common in terms of our ideals, what we were looking to create for people in the world, right? And I remember getting accepted to my program and talking to you about it. And you were so excited for me. And I remember, like, you were like jumping up and down, right? And then you would, every time you saw me, how's it going? How's it going? How's it going? Then you said, I'm next. And I was like, yes, yes, yes. And you went on the journey, and so proud to say that you culminated your journey last spring.
No, 2019.
Oh my gosh, 2019. And I remember seeing your, you know, so of course we're social media friends, right? And I remember seeing like that picture of you and your girls with you. I love that picture. My favorite picture that someone, I guess, put it into like a cartoon.
My daughter. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
So anyway, the cartoon is you walking in your regalia.
Yes.
And you have your daughters on either side of you, right? And so thank you for just allowing that friendship, because sometimes in the unknown and in predominantly white institutions, sometimes we don't allow those connections to happen because we're so guarded.
Yes.
Right? And so we made that connection. And then Doctora Cristina Melendez.
Dígame, doctora.
Founded and pioneered a company beyond
Limits Family. Well, consulting.
Family,
yeah.
That has transformed so many people in so many ways. If you're not following Beyond
Limits Family. Beyond Limits Family.
I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna get it, doctora. I'm gonna
get
it, doctora.
It's cool.
And when her so anyway, so that's a long introduction. So what I want to do is I want you to talk for you. And my first question, first of all, is share with us a little bit about your trajectory, your identity, and the impact that you are looking to create and why.
Yeah. That's like the whole time, right? That's what we're talking about.
Exactly.
That's a lot. It's so much. I think that who I am, like everyone else, has evolved over time. And as I found myself and tried to understand different things that were happening in my life and in my world, and how I was taking it in. And I always knew that I was doing things and experiencing things very differently from my peers. Like, I remember from very young, just feeling like there's something not right here. There's more here. There's something not right here. There's more here. And just constantly walking around with all those questions that were very heavy, because I couldn't just accept what was being given to me, right? Like, it was just not there was something wrong with just accepting it. For me, I remember feeling really uncomfortable with just settling for it. So I would constantly ask questions. My dad, who was not always there with my mom, right? Like, they were never together. I never experienced my parents being physically together. But the few times that I got to see my dad, he would actually like encourage that kind of like questioning and conspiracy theory thinking. And it was just insane. And so I think I just got the validation that I needed from him in those moments to continue to pursue that. So I think early on, I grew up in the Bronx, in the Highbridge section of the Bronx. Yes.
And that's one of the things we have in common, is that we didn't even realize that we both grew up in Highbridge.
Yeah. So we're not just doctors. We also grew up in the Highbridge section of the Bronx. I think the other big part for me about that is that I grew up, one of the big things was that I grew up knowing that I lived in the poorest congressional district in the country, like in the whole United States. And so I would flip on the TV and watch Oprah sort of show people places in Mississippi with no running water. And I knew that I lived in the poorest congressional district because the congressman would always tell me that, right? Like in any meetings or anything that I saw him in, he would always like emphasize that a million times. And so I was like, hold on. There's people with no running water in parts of this country, even still today. And I live in the richest city in the country, if not many parts of the world, right? And I live in that poorest place of that place.
Wow.
So that was just always really hard to carry, really hard to make sense of, but really important to know. And I didn't realize when I knew it, but as I grow into myself, I start realizing just how important it was to know that so early, and how grateful I am to knowing that, because I think it shaped that fire, that relentlessness, that commitment to not just myself, but those around me, right? And so I am fueled with that knowledge throughout my childhood growing up in the Bronx. I happened to have gone to like a public school. There was this one woman who thought I was just so brilliant and thought that I should be like skipped, like she had never seen someone like me before. And this African-American teacher, her name was Miss Pompey, who changed like everything. Like I owe every part of my educational trajectory to her, because then I end up going to a Catholic school, and then I'm able to sort of like stay in Catholic school from elementary school on through high school, which is another thing we share in common. We went to these Catholic high schools.
So what high school did you go to again?
I went to St. Catherine's in the Bronx. I didn't get to take the train, but yes, I did go to St. Catherine's.
So I would think it's so. I want to pause for a minute, and I'll do that occasionally.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we say certain things that are poignant. And I say we as a people, we talk about it like, oh yeah, and then this. Oh yeah, and then this. Oh yeah, and then this. But it's important to pause for a minute, right? Like a teacher took interest in you, but not only took interest in you, but then poured into you.
Yes.
And then that very experience literally transformed your trajectory.
And yes. And again, you don't know these things are happening. And so I pay a huge homage to Miss Pompey later on in my life as I become an educator. But I didn't know at the moment, right? Like I just thought I was really lucky. We get fooled into those things like we're just lucky and we're just fortunate, and thank God someone came around. And it was more like I deserved it, and she saw me, right? Like she saw me and she realized it, and she wanted to, and she was committed to it. And so I'm forever grateful to her. So I mean, I later on go off to high school. There, of course, I encounter some wonderful things. Like a lot of the kids that I was growing up with in my neighborhood were gone, like literally disappeared, right? Wow. And just never to be seen again, right? So I grew up with a bunch of boys and some girls, would see them all the time. We weren't in the same schools, but we were in the same neighborhood. And if you know anything about like living in the Bronx, or living in the hood, right? Like, you know your people. And so we knew everyone, and we would like, people would just disappear. And everyone was just like, oh yeah, they got arrested, and like, who knows? And like, they were doing something wrong, right? Or she got pregnant, and like, who knows where she's gonna go, right? And I was just like, that's just not right, because that could have, like, I remember feeling like that could have been me. Like, what makes us any different? And so I continued to work. I in high school, that was really hard to carry. I was out of my neighborhood, so I was able to see how other neighborhoods worked in the Bronx. And that was interesting. I was like, oh, so you guys live in little houses and it's all your space, right? Like, it was like, whoa. Even that was mind-blowing, right? Because I understood my building, and then I understood the projects, and then everything else was just like, what houses are you talking about, right? So I see parts of my own Bronx neighborhood, borough, being full of houses. And that was also like, how come they get to have houses and we don't? How come there's grass here in this park and Mullally Park doesn't have grass? It's always like dirty. Right?
Let's talk about Mullally Park.
We're gonna have another chapter back. Yes, girl. So, you know, we have all these things, and I just kept comparing, gathering information. And then I got to my senior year in high school, and I graduated. There was 250 girls in my graduating class, 53 girls to be exact in my graduating class. And I think I was number 8. I was ranked number 8, right? And so top 10 in my graduating class. I mean, impeccable grades. I was very committed to that, because my mom sort of sold me this bill of goods of like, you need to be better than me. Education is important. You need to be better than me. Education is important. And so I hustled really hard to meet that expectation for me, but mostly for her. And so I worked. I did it. I outperformed as many people as I could. I outperformed myself sometimes. I did what I could, right? And I graduate top 10 of my class. Well, I'm ranking top 10 of my class, and my guidance counselor, oh, poor lady, she was like, so you can't really go to these schools. I had a list of 7 colleges I wanted to go to. Columbia, Cornell, and I wanted to live in DC. That was my commitment. Like, I wanted to, because I wanted to be a lawyer like Claire Huxtable.
Okay.
And also like Claire Huxtable. And I wanted to be a lawyer like Claire Huxtable because that's the only stuff I knew, and I didn't like science. So I either was going to be a doctor like Bill Cosby, or I was going to be a lawyer like Claire. And I was like, I don't like science like that. So I was like, I'm going to be a lawyer. And I wanted to be like a real policy changer or criminal justice lawyer. And so I wanted to be in DC. That was where I needed to be. So all these other schools I applied, Georgetown, American, George Washington. I was dead set on being in DC. And I go with my little list of 7 schools, and my guidance counselor says, you know, these are all very reach schools. You should really think about state schools or city schools. Or how about Iona? A lot of the women in my school went to Iona College because it was down the street. Like, not down the street, but it was still like sort of in driving distance. It was like a typical school for them to go to. And I was like, I'm just not. And I think I added SUNY Binghamton to my list, and I was like, I'm done, and I don't care, and this is where I'm going, and I refuse. And she almost refused to like support me. You know how there's like parts that they have to do? Yes. And she was like, if you don't add another state school to the list, then you're not, like, I'm not going to help you until you do, and these deadlines are coming. And I was just like, yes. And of course it happened to me and my friend who was ranked number 2 and was also a Dominican woman from the Heights. Surprise, not so much. But sure enough, I was like, fine, I'll put City College on there. I think I put like a City College in there. And she then gave in, right? Because her thing was she needed to be successful. She needed to make sure that her graduating class was going to be successful and went to colleges. And she wanted to have that guarantee for herself. And she had these thoughts about me being able to get in, right? So long story short, I clearly got into all my 7 schools.
Wait, say that again for the people
I got
in the
into
back.
all my 7 schools, but I don't end up going to DC, right? So I get into Georgetown, which was my dream school at the moment. And that was the hardest thing ever when my cousin sat me down. My cousin went to SUNY Albany, and she was like the first one to like go to college, right? In my family. And so she goes, I get into Georgetown, and she's been helping me throughout the whole process. And she was like, yes, that's where you're going. That's where you want to go. And it's a great school, and it's like top tier and all this stuff. And I was like, yes. And then I got into Cornell.
Come on.
And my cousin sat me down and said, I know you want to go to Georgetown. I know it's where you want to be, because she actually took me to Georgetown to tour.
Wow.
She drove me there, right? Like she slept in her car that weekend because I was sleeping in the dorms. You know how like you can visit?
Yes, yes.
That's what my cousin did for me. And so,
wow.
She sat me down and was like, girl, I know Georgetown is your jam, but you have to go to Cornell. And I was like, but why? I don't have to. This is just as good. This is just as important. This is just as top tier, right? Because I was obsessed with top tier. She wasn't. But I was obsessed with it. And so because I wanted it for me, like, because I thought that that's what I needed to be Cristina, right? Because that's what the world told me. And so I wanted Georgetown, and I thought Georgetown and Cornell were the same in my book. They were top tiered according to the big old fat book that I borrowed from the guidance counselor.
I know what book you're talking about.
So she goes, yes, they're very similar, but there's this one thing about Cornell that Georgetown just doesn't have. And they're part of this family, she tells me. And she tells me about the IVs and what makes it an IV. And I was just like, fine. And I remember, I mean, it wasn't like I didn't ever want to see Cornell, but it wasn't where my heart was. Like, I wanted to go to Georgetown. I wanted to be in DC. And she didn't tell me I had to, but there was no way I wasn't, right? And so I end up at Cornell.
Wait, can we pause for a minute? I want to know, where was your mom in all of this?
Feeding me, clothing me, telling me it's okay. Yeah. Fighting off a lot of her friends in the community and her family, right? I am an only child. She raised me by herself. And I grew up in a generation of folks that, like, if you want to study, you can study right here. You don't have to go away to study.
Wow.
So for you to go away meant that you really just wanted to sleep around with boys.
Wow.
That was the culture, right? Like, that's the oppressive sort of machista world that we were growing up in. And that's what my mom understood. And so my mom was sitting there fighting that off, right? Like, really fighting people, telling them she deserves whatever she wants. She should go wherever she wants. Wow. If she is going to the fear was that I was going to get pregnant or lose my virginity, right? That thing. They were policing my body. They still police our bodies, but like they were policing every part of me except the part that like really mattered, which was my brain and me growing my brain, right? So, or my experiences. And so she was doing that. She was like, whatever you want. And I think that was the most powerful thing she could have ever done for me without knowing what she was doing, right? Because she didn't know. I mean, I'm sure you did the same thing. You filled out your own FAFSA forms. You filled out your own applications. You sort of kept them in the loop, but it was like, they were like, okay, sure. Like, just encouraging you. I mean, what else could they do? But
could I pause for a minute? Excuse me. But the way you even just referenced that to me in terms of our generation, like I was explaining that to my daughter last year when we were going through the process of college planning.
Yeah.
And the fact that we could nod to it, like, it's like I tied my shoe. Like, I filled out my own FAFSA. You know what I mean? I just want to pause for a minute, right? and the trauma even behind that process of really understanding. Like, I never knew how much my parents made or what finances meant. We grew up on welfare. So, but when I remember when my mother gave me the budget letter and I had to put it in FAFSA, I was like, how are we living off of that? And then I remember there was no Googling. Now you could Google salaries.
Yeah.
So it's so fascinating that you share that almost on some, oh yeah, right? Like another thing that we're like, oh yeah, we filled out the FAFSA, right?
Yeah.
And the fact that this matriarch cousin like took this role of like your ally, your mentor. I mean, oh, I want to meet this cousin.
You got to. She's in Florida now.
Wow.
But she's a lawyer, which is also a huge thing that I got to witness while I was in high school. So she always brought us along with her through her experiences. I think to your point though about like just how normal these things were. I was telling my daughters the other day how like I don't know their social security numbers. Like, I don't know my kids' social security numbers at all. I don't even know where their social security cards are. But you know whose social security number I know by heart?
Your mama.
My mama's. And you know why? Not because I've sat there and memorized it, but because I filled out so many forms on her behalf that, I mean, at some point I just memorized it.
Wow.
Yes. So, I mean, to your, like, we have put in the work in so many ways.
But Cristina,
yeah.
I mean, oh my God. See, we're going to have to do a part 2.
Yes.
Because I'm just like, we're not even getting to the nitty gritty. So you get to Cornell,
yes,
a dominantly white institution, Ivy League.
Yep.
In Ithaca, New York.
Another connection we have.
And then what was that like? Dominican, from the boogie down, high bridge.
Again, the same thing. I think I was well trained to go there. I didn't want to be there. But being there from where I came from really helped me get have perspective, enter that experience really grounded. I, of course, didn't know that at the moment. Wow. But I get to Cornell, and I call Cornell Cornhell. I will tell you, it was the best of times, and it was the worst of my times, wow. Right? Like hands down. I will also tell you that I graduated in 2002, and I have never, ever gone back to Cornell.
Really?
Not even. I've driven to, where did I go? SUNY Geneseo to drop someone off. Didn't even feel. I was like, drive faster. Hurry. We're passing Ithaca.
Wow. Es un libro.
That's like 2 books. Yeah. No. So I get to Cornell, and I come in with a very small group of Black and brown people. There are about, for those of us that don't know, Cornell has like 4 different state schools. Just like SUNY Albany, SUNY Binghamton. It's a bunch of state schools. People don't know because they keep that on the wraps. But it's really a bunch of state schools. It still doesn't generate enough of us there. So there's like 20,000 students at Cornell on average, probably more. And 1,000 of us are Black and brown, right? So it's insane. It's insane. It was a shocker. I had never been in a space like that. I have never understood what privilege was. I used to go downtown to Macy's. That was like our weekend hangout for my mom and I, like on 34th Street, religiously, like every week, just to window shop. Literally, we were window shopping. But it was the thing we did. That's what we could afford to do. That's what we could, that's what we did every weekend or most weekends. And I just thought that like people lived in neighborhoods like that, like the Upper West Side, like downtown, and that I could do it too. Because I didn't know people that lived there firsthand, I didn't feel like I knew that life, or that I was excluded, or that I even understood the amount of privilege that was. And then we would get on the train and go right back to my neighborhood and continue doing the same old things. And so when I got to Cornell, I realized what privilege was, right? Like that was the first, in 1998 was the first time I ever owned a computer. And my mom struggled really hard to get me that computer because she knew that I needed it.
Now, was it a computer? Oh, because back then there wasn't really laptops, wasn't like a thing.
No.
Oh my, and you know what? There's some young people on here. I see you young people. Listen to us. We got a couple of things to share with you. But it was like this big bulky thing that you had to then transport to school.
Heavy.
Wow.
It was so heavy, right? But I remember it was $1,400, and my mom, I don't know how she paid for it, but she managed it, right? And I got a computer. When I went to college, computers, I mean, they had cars, they had lives, they lived off campus, they had money. I was like, whoa, people live like this. Like, this is how your life is really like, right? And so it was just such an eye-opener for me. I had never seen so much money and privilege. And I just remember feeling like I don't belong here.
Wow.
There's something wrong here. I shouldn't be here. And then getting that, of course, when you bring that up into your mind, of course, you get confirmation everywhere you go. So everywhere I went, I felt like that was confirmed. Like, you may have graduated top 10 of your class, but you can't hack it here. You can't do Econ 101. You don't even know what they're saying. You don't even know if you're supposed to read the materials before you come to class or after class. Like, when is the homework really due? Like, how do you ask people those questions? Like, you're one of 700 in a big old auditorium, right? Like, it was so hard for me to be there. And then the thing that saves me is that I experienced the same thing I saw in my neighborhood. So the guys that I came into school with, we went the summer before to do like all this orientation, but they make it so easy that they make it seem like it's gonna be peachy and beautiful, and it wasn't. But needless to say, we went there earlier, and then they started falling off after the first semester.
And when you say they, are you talking about students of color?
The students of color that came in with my cohort, Black and brown kids, started to fall off. So after your first semester, you get grades. If your grades are anywhere near a 2.0, you are going to be counseled out at Cornell. They're going to give you the speech that says, come to my office. And then they're going to tell you, your GPA was very low. We cannot really sustain you here. It seems like you're having a hard time. And it would be a good idea for you to go back home, because you're probably missing home. Go back home, enroll in a local school, get straight A's, and then let's see if we reconsider taking you back. The truth is that no one or very few of us ever come back from that. Sometimes we don't even graduate college, right? So I saw that, and I immediately, it triggered my like Bronx survival mode.
Wow.
Like, it was like, oh, no. They're not going to get you. You're going to win this game. Wow. Right? And I remember programming myself and figuring it out. So then it was the second semester. Also, what happened was that I came home that semester and I had a 2.5 GPA. Mm-hmm. And for all those folks on here, especially if they're young folks on here, your first semester grades and the law of averages, that's pretty much where you're going to stay, unless you ended up with like A's for the next 3 semesters straight, right? But the weighted average of things just doesn't add up, and you it's really hard to like bounce back the way you think you're gonna if you have all these A's the following semester. So I was like, you know what, Mom? I actually, before I programmed myself, I went to my mother that winter break, and I was like, I'm gonna take a job with AmeriCorps. They pay me, and I don't go back to school. I'll just take a year off. They'll pay me $12,000 at that time. which, by the way, was more than my mom made.
Wow.
So I was like, they're going to pay me $12,000. I get to be home. It's going to be fantastic. I can help you with the rent and blah, blah, blah. And this will be great. And my mom let that rock out. She was like, sure, that's great. That sounds fantastic. She's like, but if you were going to go to school, when would you have to go back? And she goes, on this day. You already know what she did.
Yeah.
On this day. Because I'm just talking, right? I'm like, oh, the semester starts this day. So usually like move back in or whatever is this weekend before. Cool. Okay, cool. That weekend came. She was like, let's go to Macy's. Macy's. That lady took me to 42nd Street, put me on the bus, and was like, until they kick you out, don't come back.
Shut up.
So I went back in there, and that is where I got my hustle game on. I was like, oh, okay, well, I got to get out of here the right way.
She said, I called you.
She said, don't come back. Don't. Until they kick you out. If you can't be there no more, that's fine. But until until that moment comes, you're not. And that lady put me on the bus. I remember crying for 5.5 hours straight. Wow. With strangers, right? Like that don't even know. Like, you know, it's creepy. Those buses are creepy going upstate. Cause anyway, but I
want to meet. I don't know who Maxine Morgan is. I don't know, but I love that your mom.
Yeah.
Right. Like.
Yeah.
First of all, she had to fight. Let's talk about.
Yes.
Because my mother did similar things, that she had to fight off people of what you were doing, because that wasn't the traditional way that as a woman.
Yeah.
And Monique. Hey, Monique.
Hey, Monique.
So she was fighting the people, seeing you struggling, and said, get your butt back there.
Yep.
I mean, the teaching right there, those are dos libros right there.
Yeah. Right? We need to write those down. I need to write them. Yep. But she was not kidding. So I went back, hustle on hard. I put my Dominican armor on.
That's right.
And I channeled all things survival, right? Because now I was just on survival mode. And I will tell you that is a book. Like how you say that's a book. How I Survived Cornell is definitely a book that I will actually write. Sometimes I think if I write the book, they might take my degree back. They might be like, miss about that degree, so we're going to need it back.
Wow. I mean, and just let's talk about being homesick, right? Sophia talks about her first semester, she called home crying. And I used to cry all the time as a freshman at SUNY Albany. Nobody knew how sad I was. Meanwhile, I went freshman year, EOP.
Yes.
I was like 6 people deep from my neighborhood on campus.
Oh,
6
nice.
And my sisters were on campus. And still,
you were sad.
Feeling of being separated, being othered, right?
Yeah.
And when you're one of few, right? So I can't even imagine Cornell, like a whole nother level.
Yeah.
Wow. So how did you decide what major to have, and what was your major?
Oh, I was going to be a lawyer. And so I was a policy major. Only because I went to one of the state schools. And so they didn't have they had majors that were wrapped up into things. So I went to the School of Human Ecology, and that was the major that was closest to sort of articulating to law, you know, and it gave me the policy vibes that I wanted to get at DC. And so I was just like, all right, well, I'll do this. Shouldn't have done that, but that's okay.
Wow. Okay.
But yeah, I went back, I hustled on, I got through it. I mean, one of my hustle secrets was to become friends and learn so much about white sororities.
Wow.
Whoa. This is one piece of it. These white sororities are no joke. No joke. The network, the plethora of information is insane. I'm talking about basements full of old exams, full of teachers' notes, full of, tell me what you need. Let's look in the file to see if they have it.
Wow. I mean, that's like social capital.
Yes.
I don't know if you're familiar with Yosos. cultural capital wealth.
Yes, I read that.
Right? Like, that's social capital right there. So you knew enough to connect with people.
Well, I didn't know. But what I knew, or what I was ingrained in my DNA was, you don't get through things alone. You get through things with people.
That's right.
And at Cornell, there wasn't a lot of my people.
Wow.
But there were other people.
Yeah.
If I could just find me a person or two that was willing to sort of connect with me at that level, I could get through this. And so I did, right? I found me this woman who was in a white sorority. Her mom had gone to it. Like, I mean, you know, it's like generations of like, we all go to Cornell, we all go to this sorority, and we become president. I mean, all this stuff you see in like TV is actually what happens. Wow. But she helped me so much, right? There was also this African-American woman who eventually becomes a Rhodes Scholar and is brilliant. But she also was like third-generation college student, right? Her parents have been to college. Her parents were lawyers and doctors. And she was like, you know what? Come, I'm going to help you out. Wow. And so we band together, and I was able to come out of that. Wow. And find my pace. In regards to feeling homesick, I think my mom cured me of that when she was like, don't come back. I couldn't.
Wait, so she wouldn't even let you come on the weekends in between holidays?
She let me come on the big holidays, right? Because they closed. But she was, and you know, the funny part is that, you know, our parents don't talk a lot. But what I know now is that my mom was sad, right? Like, she missed me. She was hurting. It wasn't like I was missing her. She was by herself. And so it was hard for her, but she didn't want to tell me that. I think part of her not wanting me to come home was really about me not seeing her. Feel bad, right? And so typical mom stuff where you just protect your kid at all costs.
I mean, but how, first of all, because we're not going to get to the nitty gritty of Cristina's graduate trajectory, but Cristina is a 3-time Ivy League graduate. 4 times. If you could just share with us, so you went through that experience with Cornell, and then you decided at some point that so Teaching to Transgress is a book by Bell Hooks that talks about teaching as a tool to basically disrupt. That's my favorite word if y'all haven't realized, right? Disrupt systems of inequity and oppression, right? So it's teaching to transgress, to make impact, to shift paradigms. And anyway, you already know, we've been talking to Cristina for 45 minutes. As you could see, no matter what room Cristina walks in, she's shifting paradigms. She's shifting paradigms in her Facebook posts, in her Instagram posts. You put something up the other day that I was like, damn. Yeah. Damn. You talked about forgiving yourself for wanting your daughters to be like you. I had a moment with my daughter where I cried because I realized that I was doing just that. And so when I read, I was like, coño, like,
bam, she's in my house.
My timeline.
She's in my house.
Right? No. So let's talk about, so tell us, what are your degrees, right? And also, like, what inspired you to create this amazing organization where you are working with like day-to-day people, all kinds of folks from all walks of life on how to support their children?
So I want to say that the reason why Cornell is such a big marker and why it took so long to get through that story is because at the end of that experience, I realized that I don't want to be a lawyer anymore. Wow. That being a lawyer is too late. Wow. That it was my job, the person that got afforded all these opportunities, because yes, I worked hard, but also in order for me to have gotten those opportunities, a lot of my friends could not have. Because I am of no greater value than all of them. And so I realized that at Cornell, I realized that we were just cattle. Like, it was like they were just shifting cattle, and I just got picked to be on this side versus that side. And I changed where I was going. So I remember thinking, what led me here? Because I never got into the jail system or the criminal court system. So what got me here from my hood neighborhood, right? Like my poorest congressional district. And I was like, oh, it was Miss Pompey. Wow. That lady. Yes, it was my mom. Yes, it was all those things. But it wasn't because my mom was helping me with my homework. It was because my mom was present, right? And just there and being extra ruly and extra governing and all that control freak stuff that she did, which was, it paid off, right? But the most important part was that Miss Pompey saw me, believed in me, and pushed me in a whole other direction when my mom didn't know how to navigate a system, because she had just gotten here. I mean, she didn't just get here, but she got here in the 70s, and I was born in 1980, right? So it's like, what does she know? And she didn't go to school here. So I wanted to become a teacher. And I knew that. Like, I knew that sort of towards the end of my time at Cornell, and I couldn't go to, so then I joined Teach for America, and I became a teacher, and I was very clear with Teach for America. I was like, if I'm not going back to these 3 schools in my neighborhood, literally in my neighborhood, wow, I am not doing this work. Wow. And they were like, we can't guarantee that, and we can't do this, and we can't do that, right? Like all this smack. And I was like, then you don't believe in your mission, and I am not going to be with I'm not going to work for someone whose organization sells one thing and does another. But I was already like a college graduate, right? Which was also my reality. Like, I understood that there's nothing that could hurt me. Like, I graduated college against odds that were beyond belief. So I'm good. Like, I'm really going to be good. And I want to teach in these schools because I want them to see that I live in this neighborhood, that I grew up here, and that they can do it too. Because otherwise, we're going to lose them, right? Like, we're going to lose my friends. They're going to lose each other. And we're going to have these fragmented kids all over the world not being able to come together and sort of create movements like the ones we are experiencing today, right? And so I rejected the norm of graduating college and saying, well, you graduated college, you now have a badge of honor, you are elite, you are powerful, you are great, you are part of the Ivy family, you should go and make money and prosper and have accolades, and you deserve that. That's what they pump you up with in these Ivy League schools, and all colleges too, but particularly the Ivy like to preserve their name that way. And I was like, nope, we're not doing that. I'm going to take my Ivy League degree and show them that they can have one too, right? Like, kids from right here could do whatever the heck you want. And so that changed everything. I went to teach at a school literally 4 blocks away from my house. Wow. And I lived in the Bronx still. I lived on Sheridan. I would walk down. I would see my kids in the supermarket. They'd be like, oh my God, you're right there. This is my teacher in the supermarket. It would be the most fun. Oh. Wow. Just great. I did that. Then I went off to Founder School, and I spent a whole bunch of time in education. And then something happened again. I wasn't doing what I knew was needed, right? So while I changed, informed, transformed, supported a bunch of people in my classrooms, I was the teacher that, like, everyone called me Cristina. I'm not Miss. If you're not Mr., if I'm not calling you Mr., then you're not calling me Miss. So unless you want me to call you by your last name, don't call me by my last name. And so it would be this thing. I would be the disruptive one who would walk down the hallway.
That's like, why we connected so well.
It was always like, whoever had the straightest lines and the quietest classrooms was the best teacher. And so I had the loudest classroom and the craziest lines. And I told them that. Like, I was like, we're going to walk down the hallway and you better just be yourself. If you want to talk to the friend next to you, go ahead. If you don't, don't. If you want to stand in lines that are crooked, or if you want to stand in just one line, or if you want to stand in this line or that line as opposed to the girls' line and the boys' line, do you. Just be free. And boy, did I get into so much trouble for the most silliest things that I was trying to break that later become the things that every single one of my students today value, right? So they were like, I was like, what's the one thing? Because they're all my friends in like Facebook and I have the same number, just because I want them to be able to reach out to me. And they're like, because you always just let us do whatever we needed, right? Not what we wanted. They always are very clear about like, you were the best and you showed us these crazy things that like weren't even in the curriculum or appropriate, right? Like one of my students is an amazing poet. She's an amazing poet. And she's actually on Instagram and she writes these wonderful poems. And the other day she posted the Rose That Grew from Concrete by Tupac.
Yeah.
Her class was my starting class. I started teaching 3rd grade. And I taught them for 2 years. I taught them 3rd grade and 4th grade. And I was like, oh, that's my favorite poem. I've taught every class, you know, and I've showed that poem to everyone. And she goes, yeah, you showed it to me. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that I did that. Wow. You're in the 3rd grade and I'm telling you about the rose that grew from concrete and Tupac. Because I had no regard for like what you were capable of doing based on your age. Like there was no limitation. Like to me it was like, your dad's an alcoholic and beats your mom. You could read some Tupac. Like we can read some Tupac. We can read some this, that, and the other. We can do algebra in the 3rd grade. Like, why are we limiting you because it's not in this book? So part of that was like, I just had no real training because Teacher America doesn't train you to be a teacher. And the other part was that I really respected my students. And I was like, if I could do it, you could do it. If I can't do it, I'm not going to make you do it. Wow. And I think that that's the part, right? Like that I respected and valued them as humans, not as little people, not as younger people, not as smaller people, not this power dynamic of teacher and student. But I knew enough at 22 when I was teaching them with no kids that they were my peers, that I entered that relationship really committed to being in community with them, because they were my community. They were literally my community, right? And so it was just so amazing. And 15 years into it, and lots of students and kids and families that I've supported and ran buildings and supported school districts and seen the most amazing things in that New York City has to offer in regards to education, I realized that until I am working to support the parent-child relationship, we are not going to be able to transform the school system. Wow. Right? So I spent a lot of time trying to change schools, trying to make them different, trying to liberate children, trying to liberate teachers from like these mandates, like just being, right? Just like what you said, like entering spaces and just be like, well, why? And being the like perceived as like the cocky kid who thought she was so cool because she was young or she was light skinned or she was this or she was that, and just pushing those envelopes and really being willing to take the heat, right? Like I identify as Black and yes, I'm light skinned. Yep. I identify as Black and yes, I speak Spanish as my first language. And is there privilege? Absolutely. Absolutely. I have tons of privilege. And if I'm not using it to do something good with it, then what was it there for, right? So I've been very clear about that. I've used it in all my spaces. And today, what I know for sure, as Oprah always says, is that I need children to enter schools until we can change and revolutionize the school systems in the way that it needs to happen, which is like burn them down and start again.
Talk about it.
I think we need to have children enter spaces feeling completely confident in who they are. And that we cannot raise children that way if their parents don't feel that way.
Absolutely.
And because you can only teach, right? You can only teach what you know. Absolutely. You can only be for someone else what you've experienced. And because there are those limitations, I need to be in spaces where I'm interrupting some of these narratives for you, where I'm helping you sort of realize and recommit to this idea that, like, you are in fact brilliant. You are in fact an amazing mom. You are in fact the mom that your child needs. And everything anyone ever tells you about your child is actually not true unless you think it's also true. And that you have the power to reject or accept whatever comes your way. But you have to be able to do that for yourself as the parent in order to be able to do that for your kid. And then you really have to know your kid, right? So I talk a lot about this idea of like a coin method, right? I've developed this coin method where it's confidence, observation, information, and navigation, where you like literally, you build your kid up. You fill them with everything that's great about the world and about them by just speaking life to them, right? That's fantastic. And what are you thinking? And pushing them. I think people don't realize that confidence is about pushing kids. It's not about like, you're so great. Kids don't get happy. I mean, you're the social worker here, but people don't get happy. Kids don't get happy. I say this all the time in my internet feed. Kids are not happy because of the praise you give them. They're happy and they feel good and they're confident because of what they're able to do for themselves.
Absolutely.
And if we're not making kids do things for themselves, then guess what? We're not doing that work, right? So it's sort of really being able to help parents sort of see what their kids can actually do all by themselves, bringing them to that space and then let their kid do it, right? And them feeling confident that their kid can, and them building their child in the process. Then also the observation piece is like, I don't think in this hustle bustle world, parents, anyone really knows what other people do. Like, I don't think anyone really looks at their own kids and says, oh my God, you tie your shoes backwards, or you tie your shoes this way, or you eat the beans first, or you drink your water halfway and then you drink another gulp of water. Like, we don't know those details about our kid. And so what happens is that when we get information from teachers at like parent teacher conference, we got nothing to say because we're like, oh yeah, he does that. And it's like, no, I want parents to enter those spaces saying, that's interesting because he never does that in my house. Wow. Actually, what works for him is if you let him play music while he reads, he actually reads better. Right? Like, but we don't have the space or the knowledge or taken the space to observe our children that deeply. Then when it comes to information, it's like, then now that we've gathered all that information, what do we do with it? What do we do? How do we position our children in every space from a space of power, from a powerful stance, right? Like where everyone's like you enter these spaces with your child or you're speaking about your child and you speak life and greatness about them because you have all this information, right? Like you're like, oh, my child is very special. He does this thing like this, and then he also does this thing like that. But because we don't have it, because we're not living in it, we are not ready. Like we don't have it at the ready. So we're like, oh yeah, he doesn't like to read either. And we just leave it at that. But he likes to draw and he likes to paint and he likes to, and like my daughter can make, like my daughter won't read a book to save her life unless it's forced, right? Like the teacher said, but she sits there and like takes my picture of them too and like makes it into our cartoon. And I'm like, what's that? And then when the art teacher tells me, oh, she's not really into art, I'm like, that's interesting because she does all this art. Maybe your art assignment doesn't speak to her strength. How about if she just is able to do other art assignments? Ever thought of that? And the teacher's like, sure. Because the other part is that the teacher's willing to do it if you just bring it, but you gotta know. And so that's part of the navigation piece, like being able to then use all that information to navigate your child's trajectory. Because when we do that, it doesn't matter what Cornell looks like. It doesn't matter what these spaces treat you like. You can overcome them. Wow. Because it's never gonna be great. My 4 Ivy League degrees were never easy. Were never fun. I was never welcomed. I was never excited. I was never into it. That's sad to say, but very real. And I didn't have that choice, right? I didn't have the choice in my mind to be able to say, I'm not going to Cornell, I'm going to Georgetown, and I'm not going to get a master's. I'm just going to like whatever. And I'm not going to get the other master's so that I can become a school leader. And I'm not going to get the doctorate because I don't need that. I'm just great all by myself. Like I did all those things because I needed that like stamp, but my daughters don't. Right. And wow. I'm so excited for them. Right. Like, I'm like, you get to go to whatever college you want, whatever, because you want to. Like you just get to go because it's fun. And you get to have friends and you get to like sit and just enjoy your experience. And I don't have any college friends from Cornell because I didn't have time to do that. Wow. I mean, I know some people, right, but not a lot. And my master's degrees were like just a blur. And I don't know what happened. And I will say that I was able to reclaim my academic life as when I was getting my doctorate. So now that's just a more intimate space where you are in community with different people. And so really amazing. I met really amazing adults in that process, including my professors, right? So some of them are like, Nelson Flores was on my committee, your boy. And just all my other friends in my cohort that were nice, right? So, but it took so long. And my hopes for every kid is that they don't have to go through all those things. Wow. That we can raise them in ways where they can be happy from the beginning, right? That they can just experience things and enjoy those moments. I want your daughter to go to college and not think about like what her job is going to be after she graduates. I want her to go to college and just be.
Enjoy the time, right?
Right? And like, and have friends and stay up and have fun and like bring her brother up and like all that stuff that I saw people do that I'm like, oh, I never could do that.
Wow. So Doctora Cristina, I mean, I should have been sitting here taking notes, but I'll get to look at the replay and take notes. But that whole coin mechanism is so profound. And I see how you infuse it in your post. Monique says, we need to provide access. I really, really appreciate the realness here. So refreshing. And thank you for sharing your story. I'm honored to be able to be here and listen and take this all in. So tell us, where could we reach you? I love that you have a monthly subscription. Like, what are the resources that folks can tap into with Beyond Limits? Now I understand the title of your company, like on so many different
yes levels.
I mean, when I first saw it, I was like, yeah, I love that Beyond Limits, but like it has teeth to it. Like now I'm like, yes.
Yeah. Right.
So tell us, so while Doctora Cristina is sharing with us what Beyond Limits services offer to the community, if you have a question for her, please put it in there, because we're probably going to get kicked off in a couple of minutes. But I want us to, if you have a question or two, put it in the question box. Please tell us what resources are you offering at Beyond Limits? How could we access you?
So my biggest commitment, I do all kinds of things in consulting. Every consultant does everything, but I am mostly committed to building a community of parents, right? A community of parents that just is committed to learning and growing and processing their parenting, which is a very hard thing to do because 90% of that requires that you unpack your own upbringing and you unpack your own ways of seeing the world, right? And so that's tricky, and I understand that you have to be ready, but I do offer a monthly parenting group where you literally just Excellent. Pay monthly and you have access to me and you can ask me all sorts of questions in a private sort of group. And it could be one-on-one or it could be just for the group. I provide you with like weekly things to do and opportunities to help your child. And on Wednesdays, I put up a video every Wednesday on like general sort of parenting tips and ideas. So things like, why is encouragement over praise so important? Or how to give feedback to your kids so that they actually hear it and receive it and not like feel judged and like, you're always just telling me what to do. So those are the kinds of things that happen in that community currently. I am going to reopen that really soon. So by the end of the month, I'm doing that again. So stay tuned and just if you go to my Instagram page, you'll be able to see it. Beyondlimits.family is my website. There's other services that just one-on-one consulting stuff. There's also the coin method class that I actually teach parents just to experience the method class as for themselves. And I walk them through like a teacher in a class. And then I offer some services to kids because I do love to be in community with children. And so one of them is teens. Teens are really difficult for parents to manage because we have this stigma around it. It's not like it's actually a really terrible thing, but we haven't done the work before to sort of build a connection, right? So I offer this like teen motivational sort of course where I just work with your teens and hang out with them and do that work, because I did work from 3rd grade to 12th graders. Wow. And I love middle schoolers the best. Those are my favorite kids ever because they're so raw and authentic and real. And so they're my favorite people to be around all the time. And I do some like passion project development with teens, right? So a lot of the college work is you can't just have good grades anymore. You have to have a passion project. And I feel like Black and brown kids just walk around doing the extracurricular thing and having good grades, but they have so much to give to their community and they can really do it. And many of them are actually doing that work. And so we just need to really hone in on what it is they're doing, publish articles, make them be seen, have an Instagram page for that work. Because colleges really like to know now, like, what are you leaving there? What are you bringing? We want to know that you're a good student and you're going to survive. But at the same time, we also want to know that you're going to create something and that you have experience doing that. And I know that our children really do. They just don't spend a lot of time thinking in that way like other communities do because that's all they know in their life. So those are some of the things that I offer.
Just a few. Just a few. I mean, first of all, you have Courtney Starks, who has his own show, and he wants to have you on the show. And Esther says, my mom needed you, right? I know Esther's story, and I love Esther's like, oh. And doctora.
Dígame, doctora.
I mean, you dropped so many gems.
Aww.
So those of you that are listening to now on the replay, so I saved these on IGTV. If La Doctora gives me permission, I could post it on the YouTube.
Yes, please.
Excellent. And I forgot to ask you earlier. I usually ask before the conversation. Sorry. But let's support our people. Go to Doctora Cristina's page. Let your folks know about Beyond Limits. Repost it. The best thing you could do for a small business owner. I'm not even going to call you a small business owner because I feel like you're about to blow up. Like, I no longer call Velocity Visions a hustle. I no longer call Velocity Visions a small business. Yeah, I say it's a business because I don't know what God got for me. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. And why put limits? Yep, I'm with it.
Courtney said you're dropping gems and he's picking them up to eat. So do we have a question for that doctora before we leave, y'all? Does anyone have a question to put in the question box? Let's see if someone has a question. If not, I got a question. I got many questions. But we have time maybe for one question. So if no one has a question, let me look to see. No questions. Snap fingers, right? So my lasting question to you is, where do you see your work and what you're doing in 5 years? Like, what are you looking to create? What are you looking to create in 5 years? And I say 5 years intentionally.
I see you. I am really committed to building this community of parents, this collective, who's really equipped with knowing their children so well that they not only want to advocate for their own children, but to advocate for the fact that all children deserve a system that is not oppressive, that is liberatory, that is inclusive, that holds space for everyone's way of being, and that doesn't conform to the competition and the silly things that are just so easy because, you know, grades are easier to deal with and numbers are easier to calculate. But that really allows our children to shine, because I think that Black and brown children specifically, but all children, have so much to offer the world and to make the world so much better, right? And I know that we're going to make it better, but we need to have the opportunity. But the system is committed to raising doers or breaking people. That is the job of the system. And I am very much committed to parents being able to realize that, like, I don't think that's okay, and being able to have the words, the language, the power to say, that's not okay, and I don't want you to keep doing that.
That is so powerful. That is, I don't have a mic here, but that's like a...
Drop the mic.
Drop the mic. One last question, Doctora Cristina. I mean, I could talk to you for hours. I mean, we haven't chatted because our children are now in middle school. When I used to see you, my kid is now up in the high school. So it's like, I feel like I'm never going to see you again in the school. But anyway, so Courtney asked this question, which is such an amazing question. If you can have a conversation with the Cristina, Doctora Cristina, whose dream was to go to Georgetown and be a lawyer, what would that conversation look like? Wow.
Wow, Courtney. I wrote this letter to myself once, a couple of years ago. Now you're gonna make me cry. I don't know how that happens. I wasn't supposed to cry. I told myself in the letter that I did the right thing, that Cornell was where I was supposed to be, that Georgetown is still there. And if that was ever a thing that I wanted to do, I could always do it. What I would tell my daughters today, though, is go where you want. Which place makes you happy? And that is where they would go. And I wouldn't say, look, flinch in any way. But I know that I wouldn't have interrupted my trajectory of law school if I would have gone to Georgetown. I would have been a lawyer, and that would have been fantastic. But that wasn't where I needed to be. And I know that. Yeah. So I am forever grateful to my cousin for telling me just superficially to go to Cornell because of just the Ivy League stance. But I am also grateful for Cornell sending me that big envelope at that time, because
the financial aid package used to come like this.
I know, they don't even get envelopes. They like do it online now. It's like ridiculous. You don't even know. But I appreciate Cornell for sending me that envelope, because I learned what being Dominican was really like. What ancestors had really ingrained in me. Like, I know what I'm made of, and there's no one that can take that away from me. Like, I can push, I can work, I can be, I am, and there's no stopping, right? And so I don't know if being happy at Georgetown in my little DC town and living that life was gonna push me to realize just how great I was or am, right? And so
that's powerful.
So I remember writing that letter to myself before having kids and not really including my children in it. But now I think that the part that I would add to that letter is I was right where I needed to be, and my daughters get to choose.
Wow. And your ancestors are shining, looking at you, so proud. So proud. So proud. I mean, I think you were the one that brought the group that was playing palos. right? Didn't you bring them to an independent school? Or there was I feel like there was a connection. Anyway.
No, there is a connection.
There is
but
connection,
but
right?
not our school. Not ours.
Oh, it was somewhere. Okay. So Doctora Cristina, I feel like we need to have a part 2.
Let's do it.
At a later date. I'm so grateful to know you as a friend, to know you as a mama in the journey of mamas. I love that I get to also be a scholar, sister, doctora friend with you. I see us writing some things. I see us doing some things. And then she puts it back
on. Cindy, I am humbled by your invitation. I am so honored to just be in any conversation with you. You are beyond inspirational. The things you have done to accomplish your doctorate and the things you've gone through, and I only know superficially some of them, plus the things I heard you speak about yesterday with your sister on your IG Live. You know, this is such a long, hard journey. And you said something yesterday that was just so incredible, which was when you get a doctorate, we've all gotten one, right? Like every one of my students, everyone that I've ever touched came with me on that journey. Exactly. I was not there by myself. You were there with me when I was doing my thing. I was there with you when you were going through your things. And we didn't necessarily have to talk. We were there together. And everyone that we know and everyone that knows us and people that we don't even know were there with us. And so this being part of this 1% of people that get a degree like this is such an incredible privilege, such an incredible honor, but such a powerful thing, right? And I say it all the time. The worst thing this world ever did was give me a doctorate, because if I was bad before,
what?
I can't be responsible.
No, and there is
that comes out of my mouth.
I'd love a conversation at another time, and that might be like a panel discussion around. There is something that happens once you pass that I didn't quite understand it when people told me, but there was a shift that if people thought I was there getting M&Ms, yes, you were, my baby, Chef Winston Thomas Jr. He was feeding his baby. Yes, he was. I mean, there's a shift that if you thought I was a badass before, and I literally saw this with Doctora Cristina. Like, I saw the shift. Like, she was always like a damn. Like, can I just spend 10 minutes with you? And let me get some of that. To like, on some old, I'm about to blow your mind, right? And so thank you for those words, those accolades. Please share these stories with others. It's on the YouTube. So if you're not my personal friends or Beyond Limits friend, you could definitely share the narrative, because I am committed to people's healing, their transformation, and the ways in which they could impact themselves and the world, right? Yeah. So, Courtney, Beyond Limits, it's an underscore between Beyond and Limits, correct?
No, underscore between, it's Beyond Limits Family.
Okay, and there's an underscore in between Beyond Limits and Family.
Family.
Excellent. Correct. I knew there was an underscore. I knew it.
Yes, you on it. You on it.
I'm on it. So everyone have a wonderful evening. Share the information. I look forward to my conversation next week. You want to be on here with a tissue box.
Uh-oh.
Next week. I'm not even ready for that conversation. But you'll see the flyer.
I can't wait.
Tomorrow I'll post the flyer. But have a fantastic evening. Thank you again, Doctora Cristina. I love you so much.
Thank you.
I love the work that you're doing. Keep gifting the world with what you do. Your daughters are so lucky to have you. So blessed.
Thank you. And congratulations to you again.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.